We're going to finish up this lesson by addressing the special challenges faced by both younger and older drivers. Let's begin with those drivers just starting out in their driving careers. Here in Tennessee, traffic fatalities are the leading cause of death for females aged 15 to 24, and the second leading cause of death for males in that age range. It used to be the leading cause of deaths for male in that age group also, and the reason it's still the leading cause of death for females in that age range is cell phone use. The physical and emotional attributes associated with youth combine with inexperience to make younger drivers far more likely to be involved in crashes. According to the Safe Road Alliance, about 2 in 5 drivers will have some sort of vehicle crash in their first year of driving. From minor one-car collisions like hitting a road sign to the most serious possible crashes. Researchers found that the younger drivers were overwhelmingly at fault. This is true despite the fact that motor coordination and reaction times are generally superior in younger drivers. The Foundation for Highway Safety reports that although 16 to 19-year-olds make up about 7% of the annual miles driven, a driver in this age group is involved in 41% of all crashes and almost 30% of motor vehicle deaths. As if this isn't tragic enough, the American Society of Pediatrics reports that in addition to the deaths of teen drivers, over half of 8 to 17-year-old children who die in car crashes are killed as passengers of drivers younger than 20 years of age. The challenges faced by novice drivers are enormous. There are many theories for the prevalence of newer, younger drivers in motor vehicle crashes. Some of it is simply due to the lack of experience. Driving involves more than just motor skills and reaction time. Although both these factors are important, most researchers found that the ability to recognize hazards and respond effectively to them was much better in drivers with more experience. It's also interesting to note that studies show the time spent as a passenger watching another driver don't help with the experience. It doesn't improve the ability to see hazards as they develop. The only kind of experience that has a real positive effect is time behind the wheel. These younger drivers also face physical challenges. Hormonal changes in teens tend to foster risky behaviors, including drunk or drugged driving. Other types of risky behavior that lead to crashes are not scanning the driving environment thoroughly, distraction, inattention, or poor judgment on whether they have sufficient room to complete a pass. Now let's look at challenges faced by drivers as they age. The truth is that in many ways, older drivers are safer than any other age group. According to the American Automobile Association, they are the most likely of any age group to wear safety belts, to observe speed limits, and to avoid drinking and driving. AAA adds that most older drivers recognize and avoid situations where their limitations put them at risk. They drive less after dark, during rush hour, or in bad weather, and avoid difficult roads such as highways and intersections. The problem is, though, that as older drivers age, the physical attributes necessary for safe driving begin to decrease. These include vision and hearing, as well as slower reaction time. The reason all these problems don't make older drivers far less safe underlines why solutions like defensive driving classes are effective. A recent Rand Institute study found that one of the main reasons older drivers aren't found to be significantly riskier drivers is that they change their driving habits to compensate for their diminished competence as drivers. This is despite medical evidence that demonstrates that their driving skills do, in fact, decline with age. But the study did acknowledge the fact that older drivers do suffer from what they termed diminished competence as drivers. As one researcher put it, Driving mostly relies on complex neurophysiological processes that happen below conscious awareness or control. These processes become impaired in normal aging and slower brain activity, which compromise the fitness to drive. In simple English, that means older brains don't work as well or quickly as younger brains. This means poorer motor skills, which are often accompanied by weaker muscles and reduced flexibility. This makes it harder to see and process what's going on around you, makes it harder to perform basic tasks like gripping and turning the steering wheel, or pressing the accelerator or brake pedal. But probably the greatest challenge faced by older drivers might be that aging makes it less likely to survive a crash. If you look at these charts, you might notice that crashes, injuries, and fatalities all decrease in each decade from the 20s to the 60s, with a slight rise in the 70s, and then a sudden massive increase in fatalities for drivers 80 and older. This chart can make it even more clear. Notice two bars on the right-hand side that show a 44% increased risk of dying in a crash for drivers under 25, and a 573% increased chance of dying in a crash for drivers 65 and older. AAA summarizes the dangers like this. Except for teen drivers, senior drivers have the highest crash death rate per mile driven, even though they drive fewer miles than younger drivers. So, what can be done? When it comes to younger drivers, study shows that hands-on experience is the only way to become a less risky driver. Two tips can help younger drivers get the experience in a way that reduces the risk while they're learning. The first is to have supervision when you drive. As painful as it may be to a teen, studies show that an experienced driver alongside a new driver decreases risks to levels similar to having an experienced driver behind the wheel. It may be that the experienced driver sees a hazard where the new driver fails to, and alerts the driver. It also may be that a driver who is supervised is less likely to break rules and more focused on the task. The second is to take the information provided in this class to heart and recognize that inexperience, sleep deprivation, and a greater willingness to take risks are more common in younger drivers, and find ways to counteract those. But what might be done if supervision from an experienced driver isn't available? If you're a novice driver, behave as if an experienced driver is supervising you. Use the tools of following distance, keeping a space cushion, and scanning as if those skills are the experienced driver supervising you. When it comes to an older driver, if there's any doubt they should be driving, a doctor should conduct a physical evaluation and, if necessary, recommend restrictions on driving. In Tennessee, though, restrictions of this type are voluntary. But it is also should be remembered that for some older persons, driving is one of the ways that they can maintain their independence, have a better quality of life, and be able to respond to emergencies. For an older driver who continues to drive, here are some recommendations from the CDC that will make it safer. As much as possible, only drive during daylight and in good weather. Plan your route before you drive. Find the safest route and well-lit streets, intersections with left turn arrows, and easy parking. Leave a large following distance behind the car in front of you. Maintain a moderate rate of speed and avoid unnecessary lane changes. Avoid distractions in your car, such as listening to a loud radio, talking on your cell phone, texting, and eating. Exercise regularly to increase strength and flexibility, and have your eyes checked by an eye doctor at least once a year. And finally, ask your doctor or pharmacist to review all medications, both prescription and over-the-counter, to reduce the side effects and interactions. Finally, the CDC urges older drivers to consider potential alternatives to driving, such as riding with a friend or using public transit. That completes this lesson on the first tool of defensive driving, preparation. After a brief question, we'll move on to step 2 in our look at defensive driving, anticipation.